Let's take the first steps in our new game by creating a character. Since we're doing an asteroids type space shooter, our character player is going to be a spaceship. This is the one I've created for myself. You'll see it's actually animated with a simple script where costume is changed every 0.1 seconds, and that creates the illusion that the engines are sort of firing. I've created this at this great site called Piskel. Scratch itself has its own sprite editor, but I actually prefer to use Piskel myself, so that's what we're going to do here. In the right hand corner, there's an option to sign in, and I use my Google account to do that. It's a great idea to do that if you can. That way you can save work here on the Piskel site, and if you're interrupted, you don't have to worry about losing all your work. Either way, I'm going to press Create Sprite to open up the Piskel workspace. Before I got started, I went to Google and I did a quick search for 8-bit spaceship. I just wanted some inspiration. And you see there's all kinds of different looks, different kinds of spaceships that have this sort of pixelated traditional feel. Some are more complex, some are much simpler. This, for example, is a very simple ship. As I scrolled through, I sort of began to have an idea of what I wanted my spaceship to look like, so I got started back at Piskel. The Piskel workspace is actually pretty easy to use. The tools are pretty obvious. I have things like the pen tool, which will allow me to draw. Directly above that, I can change the size of my pen tool so that I can draw more pixels at a time. I have a paint bucket tool, which would actually fill in any space in between lines. I have an eraser tool, which also uses this same brush size at the top here. So if I want to get smaller again or larger. I have simple shape tools, and actually to do that I'm going to press Control Z, because Control Z on most programs and most sites, including this one, will undo my last action, and I'll go back to a small pen size so that I can practice making some shapes like rectangles and ellipses. I have a move tool, which will move things on my screen, and several others, but for now we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to grab my eraser tool, make it a little larger, and I'll go ahead and clean up my workspace. First thing I should probably do is familiarize myself with this other tool which I haven't talked about yet, called the vertical mirror tool. This is going to make it a lot easier for me to have symmetry in my spaceship. So I'm going to come to sort of the center of the screen, and I'm going to move outward, and you're going to see that it's going to automatically create symmetry with my design. That's going to make creating a symmetrical spacecraft much simpler. If you don't want yours to be symmetrical for some reason, then by all means skip the vertical mirror tool and just simply use the pen tool. So I've very quickly, without putting too much thought into it, created sort of the basis for my new spaceship. I'm going to go ahead and switch to a new color, anything I really want, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add some color. You'll notice that the vertical mirror tool continues to operate as normal, and it will color in symmetrically on each side. At this point, I'm just sort of experimenting. I'm going to add some colors. I'm going to switch back to some grays and just see what I come up with. There's really no right or wrong answer here. I'm just going to play around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just see what I come up with. If I click down here in the color palette, it's going to automatically save the colors I've used. I could also click my color picker here and click on one like black to select black once more. That you find interesting. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. There's no need for you to watch me color these things in, and I'll be back in just a moment. So at this point, without spending too much time, I've created sort of a funky looking spaceship. I mostly use the vertical mirror pen. I was changing colors down here. Every once in a while I use my color picker to get back to a color I had been using. If I have my color picker selected, It's easy to forget, but you need to go back up to the pen tool to continue to work. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and create the exhaust for my engines so we can create that illusion that they're firing. So I'm going to switch over to, I'm going to go with blues. You can do whatever you'd like. And I'm just going to sort of create something along those lines. I'm going to have a couple different colors in here. And I might even throw a couple pieces of white in there. Now, what we're going to do is up here, you might have noticed that we have this box that says 1 and the button underneath it says Add New Frame. So this is where we're going to go ahead and, instead of clicking Add New Frame, I'm going to go ahead and click Duplicate this frame. So now I have two that are exactly the same. But what I'm going to do is choose my second one, and I'm going to make small changes so that when we add them as costumes and we switch them back and forth, it's going to look like these are changing very rapidly. So what I might do is I might go back to my darker color and fill it in. I might actually even switch off of the mirror pen tool so I can create some things that are a little bit less than symmetrical, because the engines probably wouldn't fire exactly symmetrical. I might even throw a couple of little pieces as though they are shooting off from the exhaust. What you're going to see up here, it's going to rapidly rotate between the two. It doesn't look great right now. It's going to look a little bit better when we slow it down some. So I'm going to go ahead one more time and click Duplicate this frame. And I'm going to once again change some things. I'm going to erase these little dots I made. I might change the size or the shape of the exhaust a little bit. I'll add some more dots in different places. And I'll expand this white just a little bit. And there. That's going to be it for my first spaceship, and I'll come back in just a second and we'll show you how to get it into Scratch. So before we export, I realize there's one step that we need to do, and it's just because of the way that Scratch handles their sprites. And basically, for each one of our frames, we have to make sure that it is facing the right direction. And when I say the right direction, I actually mean the right direction. So I'm going to come over here to the Rotate tool, and I'm just going to press it 3 times. I'm going to do the same thing for all 3 of my frames. This is because in Scratch the default is set so that when you sort of move ahead, you go to the right. If you think of the Scratch cat on the screen, he's sort of facing the right direction, so when you tell him to move ahead, he goes to the right. And so if the ship isn't facing that direction, it doesn't work quite like it should. You're going to notice that for the rest of the video, I will have forgotten this step, so I'm inserting this in the middle of the video. So just pretend like for the rest of the video the spaceship is facing the correct direction. Now, to get it into Scratch, I've gone to the Export option over here on this right-hand toolbar. We're going to export it out of Piskel so we can put it into Scratch. Now, I have PNG chosen. I'm going to show you what we would normally do for most game engines, and then show you how we're actually going to have to do it here for Scratch. So typically, if I just went to download, it's going to download here. It's called New Piskel. And if I open it up, you're going to see I have one picture file with all 3 of my ships on them, one ship per frame. This is what's called a Sprite Sheet. Now, if we were using Unity or another game engine like it, we could just feed this one file into Unity and tell it, hey, this is a Sprite Sheet and there are 3 pictures on here, and it will automatically carve them up and animate the ship appropriately. But Scratch doesn't quite work that way. For Scratch, we need to have individual files, 1 per frame. So to do that, there are a couple of things that we can do. First off, we could just download a zip file. So a zip file is just a kind of file that you can put several other files inside of. So if I click Download Zip, it's going to download it, and inside I have all 3 pictures, which I can now drag to my desktop, to my downloads folder, anywhere I'd like. If I'm using Google Drive or some other cloud storage, I could automatically put them right in my Google Drive. So for example, I'm using a Windows PC right now, so I might come to my desktop, create a new folder. I'll call this Spaceship 2 because I already have a Spaceship folder. And now I could simply click on this first one, hold down Control, click on the other two to get them all selected, or just drag a box around all three, and just drag them into the Spaceship 2 folder. And now I have a folder that has all three of my sprites. No problem. I'm using a extraction tool called 7-zip, but all Windows computers and Mac computers and even Chromebooks come with their own options. They might look slightly different, but they all work in basically the same way. If you're not sure or you're a little unfamiliar with zip files, that's also fine. Another quick thing you could do is come right up here to the different frames, and you could right click on each one and say Save Image As, and then put them somewhere where you'll have them. So I might make a new folder and call it Spaceship, enter that folder, and call this Spaceship 1. I would right click on the second frame, call this Spaceship 2, and finally call this Spaceship 3. So you could either grab the zip file and grab those three files out of it, or you could just manually download each one from the right here. Now it's time to actually jump into Scratch. So here we are in a brand new Scratch project. First thing I'm going to do is right click on the Scratch cat and delete them. Now over here at the new sprite options, I'm going to click Upload Sprite from File, and I'm going to go ahead and just grab Spaceship 1. And there you have it. Rather than uploading the other two frames as other sprites, I'm going to add them as costumes. So I'm going to come up to the Costumes tab, and same thing for new costume. I will upload costume from file, and I will do costume 2 and 3. Now if we jump back into scripts and we want to go ahead and animate it real quick while we're here, no problem. We are going to go up to Events, and we're going to say when the green flag is clicked, i.e. when the game starts, and we're going to go down to Control. And what we're going to have happen next, it's going to happen forever. We want the costume to continue to change forever, over and over again, for as long as the game is played. So we'll drop that in there, and now we'll go to Looks. And we're going to say Next Costume. We don't want to say switch to a certain one because it'll always go back to that one. We just want it to rotate through its three options forever. So Next Costume inside the Forever tab. And let's go ahead and click play, or click the green flag and see what happens. Okay, and kind of like it was in Piskel, it's going a bit too fast. It looks kind of crazy and not sort of the effect I'm looking for. So I'm going to stop it. I'm going to go back to Control, and I'm going to find the Wait button. And I'm going to grab it, and I'll just put it underneath the Next Costume tab. And we'll see now that they'll change every 1 second, which is the exact opposite of the problem before. Now it's going way too slow. So you can experiment some. I think that 0.1 seconds actually looks pretty good. And so now it kind of looks like the engines are firing, and they'll do this forever. So in this first video, we were able to create our player character in the form of a spaceship sprite, or a series of 3 sprites. We exported it from the Piskel website, we imported it into the Scratch program, and we made a simple script that will run forever that animates our spaceship to make it look as though it's actually firing its engines. Stay tuned for the next video where we will actually make the spaceship move around the screen and take the first steps into making it an actual game.